Being obsessed with the Spice Girls at the age of 10 was really having its perks. I gained confidence. I started to see I could do whatever I want in my life. And I learned that I don't need a man to make me happy. What a lesson to learn when you're 10. But as a 10-year-old, you have no idea what goes on behind girl power, Zig-a-zig-aaah, and Hi See Ya. And last week I read the first autobiography from Melanie C, and she talks about a lot. Actually, it's quite a big book, actually. She talks about her upbringing in a working class family, how the Spice Girls knew that girl bands would be the next best thing, and the industry didn't believe them. She talks about her mental health and support system, how the Spice Girls evolved from girl power to LGBTQ plus messaging, and she talks about the toll of fame. And as I'm still a little bit obsessed with the Spice Girls and I love helping entrepreneurs, I wanted to, combine the two in this week's podcast. So I wanted to create business lessons from the Spice Girls. This is Big Business with Sarah, the podcast for entrepreneurs who want to continue building their business and understand you should never stop learning. The first lesson is I tell you what I want, what I really, really want. So the first thing I want to talk about is how the Spice Girls really, really believed in themselves and in the fact that girl bands could really become a success. So the story really is a little bit of a pop history lesson, is that, in the time when they got their first single out, which was 1996, in the mid 90s, beginning of the 90s, boy bands were really big, and female solo artists, like, for instance, Mariah Carey, Whitney Houston, Celine Dion. TLC was also quite popular, which is obviously a girl group, but the industry didn't really believe in them. And they were scouted, actually. I know that it was for a very long time. It was written on Wikipedia that the Spice Girls were a marketing trick. Well, I don't believe that, actually, because they were scouted, and then they got together, and then they really there was this huge chemistry happening there. So they were much more than what is suggested. But when they were, trying to sell themselves to labels and management and everything, the industry didn't believe them. They didn't think that, girl bands would be a thing. And even though the business lesson right here is that even though you don't, if there's people who don't believe you, who don't think you will be successful, who don't think your niche or your specific choice within a niche is a good idea, actually consistency and persuasion will really bring you a very, very long way. So, I mean, I'm going to mention this a couple of times in the podcast, but people who are saying that overnight success exists are lying. It's not true. It doesn't exist. I'm also going to give the Spice Girls example at the end of the episode. But so keep on believing in it. Of course, have something, have financial aid or have a job, aside from the thing that you believe in, to stay alive. But don't lose your dream. And that's also what they didn't either. And so I was, it was so funny because I was reading the book last week and I loved it. Actually, it really brought me back to, being 10 years old and so obsessed with the Spice Girls. And she's also talking about, putting on the lights on, I think it's Oxford Street in London. And I had the home video. They had a home video, how do you say it, recording, and it was called 1 hour of girl power, and that's one a part is lightening those streets, and I would remember thinking, oh, it would have been so great being there, and I was just really a big fan. But if you and so I was when you're getting older, you're forgetting that you were obsessed when you were 10 years old. And it got me a little bit back to at the beginning of my career, because my first job was, my first full-time job, because I'm working since I'm 12, but my first full-time job when I was 24 was working at the museum nights and in Amsterdam. And it's a very successful event, actually. 35,000 people were coming, mostly 18 to 35-year-olds. And I remember talking to, many marketing, people on marketing departments, also from, for instance, sponsors, who were in a different industry than we were. And we were having conversations, and they were asking, yeah, but what is your marketing plan? What is your, what is your research? And we were actually a little bit like, yes, okay, we do some research, of course. We do audience development. Yes, we find it very important. But most of all, we're actually doing what we really like and what we think that works. And so, and that job to me was very empowering. I really loved it. And I know that many people don't want to do that or couldn't have done that because, because they didn't know what to do, and we actually did. And so it kind of brought me back to that first job. And now that I'm running my business, as a business coach, I'm doing exactly the same. I'm doing exactly what I want. Yes, I'm doing a lot of research. Yes, I'm reading a lot. Yes, I'm still being coached, following a lot of courses. But most of all, I believe in myself and my messaging. So I think you should too. It's so inspiring. There's so many ways to bring across your message, and it's you are putting on, you are the messenger, so you better make it really yours. So the second business lesson I want to share with you is, when you're feeling sad and low, we will take you where you gotta go. So what the Spice Girls did, and it's funny because Melanie C mentions it in her book too. So she's saying that on their first album, Spice, it's not very much about girl power. It's also a lot about relationship and everything. And but actually their messaging in the promo, in the interviews that they did, was very much about girl power. And so what I love about this is that they were empowering others. So when I was 10 years old, obviously my English wasn't perfect. It still isn't. But when I was 10 years old, I heard that and I thought, oh, you know what? I'm a girl. I can have power. I was very shy when I was a little girl, and I was being bullied. And it is actually really the Spice Girls who rescued me from being bullied, because I thought, you know what? I am holding the chips in my hands. I can decide whether I want to be bullied. That's really true. And I'm not saying, that everyone, I'm talking about this many, many times. Listen to episode 24 on radical responsibility. I'm not saying that everything is always your own fault, but I was really deciding then and there that I didn't want to be bullied anymore. And I wanted to take charge of my life when I was 10. So, they were empowering me. And I'm also talking about this in my signature Big Business Framework, which is, my coaching program. I'm helping my clients find their real purpose, and also how to empower others, how to help others. Business, running a business is really about helping others. You should move your ego aside at all times. And I cannot believe actually that there is not many business coaching helping you with this. Lucky me, because, I can offer you that and I know how important it is. But, I think, having an empowerment message or a helping message or something that people haven't heard before, but they were really craving for, that is your golden nugget. That's what you have to invest in. So their messaging first was girl power. And so this was when I was 10, but back in 2019. So I went to one of their live concerts. Actually, it was in March 1998. This was 2 months before Jerry decided to leave the band. And March 2020, 1998. And I remember I was so overwhelmed. This was I think, my first immersive experience as a child. I mean, I saw them standing there. I mean, it was an incredible experience. I loved it. But back in 2019, they were going to do some sort of reunion tour, and they were doing it in UK and Ireland. And I remember we were going with two friends. My husband and I were going with two friends, and we were all sitting with our laptops, buying those tickets. And there were different. One person would go for the tickets in Manchester, the other in London, and the other in, I don't know where else they went. And I was in charge of Bristol. And it was very exciting. We couldn't get through, and then yes, I could get through in the Bristol ticketing, and we were we're having our phone on speaker, and yeah, I got in, yeah, stop the other transactions. Anyway, we went to Bristol in 2019. It was so much fun. I was wearing my little British flag dress, which I got actually in my bachelorette party. And I'm still wearing it sometimes. So we were there, and it was raining all concert, and they, there was no roof at the stadium, and it was raining the whole time. But I was actually so happy. I was standing there, very near the stage actually, and I was sitting, standing there with so many people, who were my age, and obviously also were 10 when they were fans, and now they're mothers and everything, and so it's nice to see people change. Anyway, when I was standing there and it was raining, I was crying the whole time. So I was very happy it was raining, actually. I was crying the whole time. I don't know why, but it was just, I was so happy to see them again. Victoria wasn't there, but I mean, it was still the Spice energy. But one of the things that I loved so much about the concert was that their messaging has changed. So first it was very much, of course, about girl power, but now it's more about, inclusivity, diversity. So it was very much about LGBTQ plus rights, but also about, inclusivity, different races. And so it wasn't really it wasn't just about the girl power. And I loved so much that they opened up the message, and that they actually really, were following, exactly what the time was asking for in 2019. Actually, it still is. So, always don't be afraid to update your impact and your messaging and your empowerment. So yeah, just also a little personal messaging there. That I was crying the whole concert. I mean, it was a great experience. So third business lesson is stop right now. Thank you very much. Fire your manager, fire your team member if they are not helping you. The Spice Girls fired their manager because he wouldn't listen to them. Obviously, Simon Fuller, he did, they actually fired their first, kind of scouting managers, or, the label managers that, were supposed to help them. They didn't really help them. So they decided to sneak out with all their materials. And then, they hired Simon Fuller, who really helped them a lot, but their schedules were crazy. And they decided to actually fire him. And I think that was a very wise decision, health-wise and business-wise. I think it was still okay. By the way, Simon Fuller, I think he's again managing them. I'm not really sure. Melanie C mentions it a little bit, but the point I want to say with business lesson number 3 from the Spice Girls is that there's so many people working with others who do not support them, and I want to say stop that. So, for instance, I loved my clients, by the way. I always did. As an interim manager, that I've changed from interim management to business coaching about 8 months ago. And so I loved my interim management clients, but I'm loving it even more that I can actually record a podcast episode about the Spice Girls if I want to. And because I love the Spice Girls, and people know that because, it's part of my messaging. They have really helped me, at the beginning of my life. I just mentioned it when I was 10. So I want to inspire you to step into your own power and your inner, being. What do you want, and who is going to support you? And if there's, I mean, I'm not sure if you have a manager, maybe you do actually. And if that manager is not helping you, then, have a conversation. You don't have to say, what, you're sacked, but just, have a conversation and say, what, I want this on my terms. I want it this way. And, so many people, and I already mentioned it before, so many people are working with people who are not supporting them, who are not helping them. Why? Why should you pay them? I really have no idea. I've stopped working with people that really don't support me anymore, and it's not really a fun part of business, but I mean, it is very important to realize this. So I thought this was an important one too. Business lesson number 4 is too much of something is bad enough. I was thinking, by the way, for this episode, would I sing? Because probably that would be something, a little bit more interesting to listen to. It's not going to be really great, but I decided not to. So too much of something is bad enough. Melanie C mentions in her book a lot of about mental health and a support system, and she clearly needed help. Actually, right at the beginning. And she talks also about how artists are often people who want to have a great stage experience, but really don't want to have the other things of fame. And she's talking about the paparazzi, and it is so much more than that, performing. And so she wished in the book that she could turn that around. And what I'm learning from that is that you should be always, you should really understand very well how to create the business and life of your dreams. And it's so important to understand this, because sometimes it can actually happen that you're having a great launch, a great success. Maybe your book is a great success. Maybe you have a huge client all of a sudden who's paying you 100,000 euros. And sometimes, that can be, fun in one way. So for instance, for Melanie, what she really liked was performing, and she was, she's doing great stadium shows. I mean, how interesting is that, if you really wanted to perform, because that's what she talks about at the beginning of the book. She talks about that she wanted to be on stage. She was always happy when she was on stage. And, but there's also some other things that are happening when you are choosing that life. And so if you are choosing, for instance, 100,000 euro client, then they are going to maybe want to interfere in your private life, or because, they want you to be on call for 24/7 because, they paid you 100,000. So, or maybe 1 million, So realizing the choices that you're making, and it can actually happen. You can have that success overnight. I mean, air quotes here, but I mean, you can have that success all of a sudden. So really being clear and visualizing, and this is why I'm helping my clients visualize every part of their business all the time, is very, very important to actually have that business success in the long run. Business lesson number 5 is I'm giving you everything. I mean, this is my favorite song. Say You'll Be There is, I mean, I remember, seeing Wannabe. I loved it. I mean, I was, my babysitter, actually, she told me, yeah, Sarah, I mean, I wasn't a baby anymore. How do you say? I think it's the same. She told me, Sarah, you have to watch MTV. And I did. And when I saw them, I mean, I was like, where do I sign up? I mean, I loved it. But then the Say You'll Be There video, in the great desert, beautiful, beautiful video. I knew, okay, yes, they're here to stay. I'm glad, they're not, they're no one day fly. And it's also a great song. I love it. Anyway, I'm giving you everything. Melanie C mentions in her book that they started the other way around. So, they were, of course they worked. So they worked for 2 years. So they started in 1994, coming together, having those, label managers, which, they walked away from. But actually when they released their first single, Wannabe, they were doing promotion shoots, interviews, etc. And instead of just, trying to play and live and build from there. And I remember thinking about how successful they were, also with not just with music. I mean, they sold so many albums. I think they're still holding the record. I mean, come on, people, but they're still, they're still one of the most successful music artists. But that wasn't all. They also got a lot of sponsorship deals. They worked with Chupa Chups, deodorant brand, which I forgot, Pepsi, of course, Walker's Crisps. All those different brands, and people were thinking that they were sellouts, and also Melanie C mentions it, that they didn't want that anymore, but that's what Simon Fuller arranged for them. But actually, when I read the book of Melanie C, I realized, I remember as a child, I was thinking, wow, those Spice Millions, because I think they were estimated at 25 million per Spice Girl. But that was actually burned very soon too, because they were spending money too, because they were used to having a big team, having big shows and everything, and guess what, that costs money. And so the lesson here is that you will need a profitable business model, and is a profitable business model is just as easy as having more money come in than going out, right? So I mean, I don't have to be too unclear about that. I mean, that's it. And a scalable business model is going to help you be more profitable, by the way, in times when you're sick or taking some time off in a sabbatical, or maybe when you're having a baby. So I would really highly recommend having a scalable business model, but having a profitable business model is a really good idea. And if I'm the funny thing is, you always hear the success stories and everything, but if I'm reading Melanie C's book, I think it's 2 times that she mentions it. Yeah, well, actually, I really need the money. That's what she's actually saying. Like, they were very happy with the 2019 tour. And actually, I, as a fan, am very happy to pay for that, by the way, for my ticket, because, I love them and I want to support them forever. So, it's not it's not as much as, you're thinking, what, yay, I've earned those millions 20 years ago, now I'm good. No, they actually did spend it. So, what I love about Melanie C, by the way, as a recording artist, is that she's spending a lot of money on, producers, writers. She's really having a great team around her. So, and she really decides to invest in that. And I think, I think that's really good. But yeah, just be smart about what you're spending your money on. Business lesson number 6 is, who do you think you are? So know when to say no. This is the thing that I found so interesting reading in the biography of Melanie C, is when Jerry left the Spice Girls, the other girls wanted to continue, obviously, but Melanie C really needed some time to spend and attention to spend on her mental and physical health. She had some solo projects going on, and she, the way I'm reading it, she just didn't have the headspace to do it. So knowing when to say no, daring to go all in your pivot is so key. And so she pivoted too, right? So I'm helping people pivot their business, but she pivoted too. She went from Spice Girl to solo artist, but she still is a Spice Girl. So there's so many people I know that are afraid of letting go of what they have. And I strongly believe you should have a strategic plan to fill the gaps, like money, like a time planning, like a very strategic on anything, marketing, press. But most of the time, you just really need to push your mind into saying it's time for the next step. And that could still be a part of the Spice Girls, but I'm putting my solo career first. And so what I'm reading from Melanie C is that, she let other people decide on recording the third album Forever is called. Sorry, I was a little bit blanking on the title of the album. Actually, this I mean, I remember when Jerry left the Spice Girls. I remember my mother. I think I was doing homework upstairs, and my mother listened to the news, and I think it was the 6 p.m. news, and then there was the children's news, which is called Jeugdjournaal in Dutch. I think it was at 6:30. I mean, I don't really remember, but she already heard the news, and I remember her saying to me, "Okay, Sarah, you have to come downstairs because the children's news is coming on very soon." She kind of knew what was going to happen. And she said, "Yeah, you really have to sit down." I was like, "Okay." I mean, I know the news is important, but I'm a child, please. And I kind of already sensed it, and well, and this was the moment when her lawyer stepped out, and she regrets to inform us that she has left the Spice Girls. And oh, I remember, really my heart sinking down, my my toes. And I was thinking, it's over, for me as a fan. I mean, I was already a little bit too old, getting too old for it. I was going to middle school very soon, and I was thinking, yeah, no, you know what, this is it. But so this is also where I lost interest. That's just a very dramatic way of saying. I love the second album. I love their movie. But with the album Forever, they kind of lost me as a super obsessed fan. Um, and I think they did with I think many fans actually kind of didn't want to be uh, as loyal anymore. And I'm a little bit sorry to say this, actually, by the way, because I am such a huge fan, but it's actually the truth. Anyway, she didn't say no. She didn't say no on recording that album. And maybe it would be so much better also for the rest of the girls if she would have done that. But she, once again, she's talking a lot about mental health, and how it's really important for her. I didn't actually really mention it too much, but Melanie, I mean, she is, um, I'm not really sure, what is her diagnosis, but the thing is that she really needed help, and she didn't really get it, and actually she was really being pushed to the limit, and yeah, I think it's such a shame, actually, to read it now as a fan, knowing that she was actually so unhappy. Mm, all right. So that's the thing about choosing, daring to choose, and thinking about your own mental and physical health. So if you have a job, so for instance, if you have a boss or if you have a business, and if you don't have nice clients, if the clients treat you badly, if your boss is treating you badly, if your, I don't know, support system doesn't support you anymore, get out. And the last business lesson I want to share with you, number 7, is now we got the flavor, the bad behavior. I love if you can dance. So it doesn't matter where you're coming from as long as you have the drive to change something to be successful. So Melanie mentions in her book that one of the first band members that she was also working with, Michelle, didn't really want it. So the other 4 girls, so the 2 Melanies, Victoria and Jerry, really wanted it, and they wanted to be successful. This was right in the beginning, in 1994, and as soon as Michelle could, she would go out sunbathing, and not be really too much a part of forming the band. And actually she left, or I'm not really sure if she left or if they told her to leave. Sorry, I a little bit blanked on that detail right there, but they needed another band member, and when Emma joined, she joined last. Melanie C felt it. The band was complete, and they were going to take over the world, and they had a mission. So the 4 girls except Victoria are coming from a working class family, and Victoria was a little bit, I mean, she's posh spice, obviously. She was from a little bit more richer family than the other girls, but she really wanted to be famous. There's so many interesting books about her. And, right now she's a fashion designer, obviously. One of the reasons also why she's not performing with them live anymore was because she was so nervous at the 2012 Olympic closing ceremony where they were asked. So she decided not to be part of the live performances anymore. But, Victoria just wanted to be famous. That's it. And they had a very strong drive and understanding. And I think you really need to know this. And this is not a fun and nice message to end with, but the reason why it hasn't happened for you might be, try to ask yourself the question, do I really, really want this? And is this really, really, is this really, really driving me? Is this really, going, through my veins? And any business mentor, like for instance, Tony Robbins, Gary Vee, anyone tells you this, and I'm telling you too, you really have to want it to reach it. And it's very annoying to hear this. I know. And you also have to enjoy the process because it's not going to be easy. And, the Spice Girls look like overnight success, but they worked 2 years for a very, very measly salary. I want to say to you, do not believe anyone who tells you that their quick hacks are going to help you, create $1 million. I've seen so many people, and most of the time they're business coaches, unfortunately, who are saying, yeah, you know what, I'm a self-made millionaire without any help or without any paid ads, and I was a success in 2 months. It never is, and actually it wasn't. So yeah, try to find that mission, that impact, that passion, and really turn it into something good. And once again, I'm mentioning it in my big business framework. I can really help you with this, but you can also try to do this yourself, obviously, if you don't have the means to work with me. So really try to think about, yeah, you know what, I really want this. I don't like this. I want to change this. You know what, I'm going for it. So those were my 7 business lessons from the Spice Girls, and also mostly from Melanie C. I want to thank Melanie C for writing this great book. I think, it's also a very personal book. I loved listening or reading her personal stories, and to me there were still quite some eye-openers there. As a fan, you hardly see the entire story, and actually this is the first autobiography, I have to say, that I've read of a Spice Girl, because I think Melanie C is such an incredible person. I love them all, actually. At first I was a huge fan of Emma, then Jerry, then Mel C, then Victoria. It's just, I'm a fan of all of them, obviously, but Melanie C, I think she did a great job with writing this autobiography. So thank you for that, if you're listening. All right. So thank you so much for listening to my podcast. There's one more little message that I wanted to share with you that I don't want to keep from you, is that I am opening up my Black Friday workshop. So I'm hosting this workshop for my mastermind, and it's actually a bonus. So, when you're in my mastermind, there is still a lot of options to say, you know what, I want to learn more about this and that. So, and I wanted to, because this is a bonus, I wanted to give this to you too. And so what will you learn? So this is the Black Friday workshop. It's going to be about how you are going to sell on Black Friday, right? So it's not my workshop during Black Friday. That's going in 1.5 month. But this is about how you can actually sell on Black Friday. So you will learn what to sell, how to sell it during Black Friday. And so you will have some extra support on this, right? So maybe you have some ideas on Black Friday, and you can join my workshop. It's priced only at 34 euros. That's actually less than a Spice Girls CD would have costed. So you can join, and just to be sure that you're having a great strategy there. So the link is in the description. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for your support. I love it that you're listening here. Do send me a message what you're thinking. You can rate this podcast. You can share this podcast if you like, especially right now with a Spice Girls fan. And I hope you enjoyed today's episode.